Hey guys, how's it going, and thanks for coming. I'm Nick, and this is Real Life Money, where we talk about real life and money because you know schools aren't. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos. So let's get started. So in this video, guys, we're going over the differences of leasing a car versus buying a car. And there are pros and cons for each, of course, but we're going over just like the main factors because I think those main factors really determine which could be the better option for you. As you can see, I got my Ferrari and Lamborghini parked over here, so I consider myself a car expert. No, I really don't, but I do know a thing or two about money, so that's why we're going into it now. Like, car buying is definitely a stressful time. You don't know which is the right option. You always feel like you're getting screwed, and we can't trust dealerships. So we really have to figure out what we should actually know. So quick background, I am helping my girlfriend look for a car, and I have had my personal car for just over a year now. Was I skewed of going toward the Lincoln because of Matthew McConaughey? Maybe. Is this video sponsored by Lincoln? Maybe. So quick background for myself, I did have a few Hondas that I owned in my past. I all owned them. My second to last one, I had another Honda Accord that was leased for a few years, and my newest one, Lincoln, I bought. But I feel like all of these tips will essentially relate to everyone, because when you're looking for cars, all of these are options. So the first two main options that you have while looking for a car, before getting into detail, you could either go for a new car or a used car. So obviously, if you know anything about cars, they're not the best investments because they do depreciate over time. If they appreciated over time, I'd probably have multiple. But really, no one can get away from this factor of cars. They go down in value. And within the first couple of years of their existence, like their first maybe 3 years, is where they depreciate the most. So obviously, looking at just these two factors, the obvious most inexpensive choice would be a used car. Now, as we know, there are a bunch of other options. It's just not that simple of new and used. There are additional 3 other options that you have to look at. Like we mentioned before, we could either look into leasing, financing, or buying the car in cash. So we're starting it up with leasing. I feel like this is definitely one of the most popular options out there. A lot of people do lease their cars. Now, what leasing is, essentially, it's kind of like renting a house or an apartment. You have a lease, essentially, for a normal car lease, it could be 3 years. So you pay into this every single month, and at the end, you don't own it. However, then after those, let's say 3 years, you upgrade to the next car, and you lease that out. So you always upgrade to a newer car. You are under that warranty, essentially. So I guess the pros for that is you always have a new car. You really don't have to worry about it breaking down too often. If you do have to worry about a warranty on a new car, that's probably an issue. And by the way, if you do get a lease car, most likely it's going to be a newer model. Now, with these leases, you could either put very little or nothing down, and then you just have to deal with a monthly car payment. Now, if you guys are familiar with Dave Ramsey, you know that he loathes and despises car leases. Because, it seems like dealerships try to push that, so obviously it's beneficial to them and not to us. You're always going to have that car payment. Yeah, you're going to have these newer cars every few years, but you're going to be paying for that forever. At the same time, when you're signing up for these leases, you have to estimate how often or how much you actually drive. At the end of that lease, if you actually drive more than the expected miles, you have to pay that. As well as if you have any major damage to the vehicle, you're going to have to pay those expenses. So those were kind of the main factors for leasing. Now looking at financing. And this is kind of like a mortgage to a house. You have to put money down on a car. At least most situations. You might get away with nothing down, but obviously that's going to jack up your monthly payments. But essentially, you have this loan for a few years. Average might be 5 years. But after that, once you're done paying it, the car is yours. you have no more payments, and you own the car outright. I think the biggest car savings is when you don't have a car payment. Like myself, you don't have to be shelling that money out every single month. The average car payment, $500. Where do I put my $500? Inside my pocket. So those are basically the main differences between leasing and financing. You get to have the car after you pay it off. You are also able to finance like a used car. I'm sure you're able to like lease, not necessarily new car. I think a new car of like either brand new, a year old, or maybe just slightly more than that. But if you want to finance, you could definitely do several years of an older car. So we talked a little bit about financing, leasing, and now feels like kind of like 1% of the people out there go with the third option of getting a car, which is going to a dealership or private owner with a suitcase filled of stacked Benjamins. Now, you don't have to be fancy. You don't have to like slap down $50,000 for a car, but you can put down like maybe $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 on a car. You own it outright. You have no more payments, and that's kind of it. Now, I believe the main recaps to look for is when we're talking about leases, yeah, it's going to be under warranty and you really don't have to worry about it like breaking down or anything. However, most of the time, it's a new car. It's probably not going to need a warranty or any major changes. If it does, then it's probably a garbage car. Most of the time, a newer car isn't going to need major changes. And essentially, you could spin this, you could be different, you could think differently, whatever, but essentially, a car is a want, not necessarily a need. You do not need a new car every 3 years. You might think you do. It's like, oh, I want the warranty and all this stuff, but there are other options. Other options being like financing. You could get something a little bit more affordable because you don't have to go for that newer lease. You can go for an older car, and actually finance it and own it after that. I feel like the main issue linked between financing and leasing is there are interest payment, like interest involved with that. Now, technically leasing isn't a loan, so they don't always have to disclose these interest rates to you. They could be like thrown in there and hidden, because they don't necessarily have to like tell you. Financing, they tell you straight up, hey, this is going to be like a 4% interest, and that's what you pay. Now, for you smarter guys out there, and if you're watching this, I'm sure you are, some people might state, well, yeah, even if an interest rate is 4%, and you, instead of paying that off, you invest that money. Average stock market return gives you 7%. So instead of getting a 4% return and paying that interest off, you can invest it somewhere else. And yes, technically, that is correct. You're not guaranteeing that higher rate of return, but you can essentially get that. However, the two things that what I believe in paying off that car loan is, one, that it's guaranteed. If it's 4%, you're guaranteed a 4% return because you're not paying that interest anymore. Two, well, for going back to that guaranteed thing, like right now the stock market is all over the place. Of course, it's always going to have ups and downs, but it's been down for quite a while. It might be rebounding. No one really knows what's going on right now, so it's not guaranteed. You could actually lose money. So you could also, technically, there is a risk that you could lose half of your money, quarter of your money, third of your money, whatever, in stock market or in an investment. If you pay off a car, it's guaranteed. And when you pay off that car, you're not only just not paying the interest, it's increasing your cash flow now. You don't have to pay that car payment anymore, so now you use that extra money for something else. More debt, you can invest more, what have you. And of course, that last option of cash. You just pay it off, don't have to worry about it. Now, yeah, of course, there are pros and cons to all of these. There are definitely some more pros into like financing or leasing, some added benefits. But I feel like those are minimal compared to when you pay off the car, when you like completely, either with cash or after a while with a loan, you eventually own it. I feel like the savings that you have on that car with that no more car payment far exceeds other little benefits of other options. So for me personally, I think that owning a car with no car payments is the better option, in my eyes at least. Also realize how cars depreciate. They depreciate the most within the first couple of years, like we mentioned before, but once that depreciates, like after a while, it kind of steadies out, it kind of remains around the same price. It might decline a couple $100 after a couple years, but it doesn't decline so fast. So when you get it around that level, when it doesn't decline as much, that could be a better value. You don't want a car too old that could crap out and just explode on you, so you have to pay a bunch of money to get it fixed. But to get, a few year old car could be better. I feel like those are kind of the main things to look at from all these options, from leasing to financing to cash, whether you go new or used. So tell me what you guys think. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos, guys. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see ya in the next one.